What's up, Bama Insider Nation? Trey Kennedy here to break down week number 3, Alabama versus Florida, joining you from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Thanks for being here, guys. A lot to break down, obviously, with the Crimson Tide's first SEC matchup of the season in a thrilling game. Your final score 31-29. The Crimson Tide have to escape the swamp, escape the Gators in this one, in a game that had a lot of different layers. Before we get started, guys, I want you to get in here and comment your favorite moment from yesterday's game and what worried you the most, what excited you, what you liked the best, and maybe what was one thing that caught your eye yesterday. Get in the comments, guys. Thanks for being here. Today, to get started, we're going to break down Bryce Young's performance in that quarterback room. This was Bryce Young's first true test. I mean, we had seen him play well against a ranked team in Miami just 2 weeks before, but we hadn't truly seen him get tested by an elite defense. It's not to say Florida's defense is elite necessarily, but it was well ahead of any defense Young has faced to this point, and I'd like to think he handled it very well. This was his first true road SEC environment, and it was raucous. If this game was at nighttime, the result might have been different because it was already quite the atmosphere just 2:30 p.m. with the rain and everything else, but overall I think Bryce handled the pressure well. There were times where he looked a little bit frazzled, and Zach Carter was giving him everything he had, but they were working the right side of the field to try to keep it away from Carter, and it looked like he was still able to handle the noise and handle the pressure with his calm and cool like you always see Bryce Young have. But one thing I did notice was communication was certainly affected, and this was something I was worried about coming into the game. This is a young Alabama group. We didn't know exactly how well they were going to be able to communicate in an atmosphere like Florida. There were some penalties yesterday on both sides of the football because Alabama couldn't communicate and couldn't get the snap count correct. Outside of that, I don't think the atmosphere played too big of a role into this game, and it looked like Bryce Young, at the very minimum, handled the atmosphere very well, and it gives you confidence moving forward to what he can do in situations like the playoff or maybe the national championship. Now, Bryce did look like he was throwing a bit behind his receivers yesterday. His timing was just a hair off, but overall, his passes looked good, and he had 3 touchdowns on the day. As we look at the final numbers here, 22 for 35 on the day. He had 233 yards, 3 touchdowns, a passer rating of 147.1. So I was talking about his first career SEC start, home or away. Bryce Young, keeping himself certainly in that Heisman conversation early in this season. Looking good again yesterday, and Alabama, guys, just needed to get the win. I mean, this was the hardest game, in my opinion, on the regular season schedule. Let me know what you think, though. Was this Alabama's biggest test? Is it going to be Texas A&M? Is it going to be Ole Miss? I want to talk about Brian Robinson next. And B-Rob looked good to start this game. He was gashing that Florida defensive line, even the Florida linebackers as well. Robinson did end up with 2 touchdowns in this game, and we will be selecting an offensive MVP and defensive MVP from this game a bit later on. I won't spoil it too much, but Brian Robinson did slow down in this game, and he seemed a bit dinged up as well. You saw him kind of limp off the field there early on in this game. He did come back and looked like he wasn't any kind of hurt, but didn't necessarily have that same first step we saw early on in the game, really in that first quarter. Jason McClellan, though, maybe took a half step back as well after he got some early action. Only 9 carries on the day. I want your guys' opinion. Why did this running back room take a step back yesterday? Florida's defense obviously looked really good in that second half, but what was the key to stopping Alabama's run? This is something I think they're going to have to lean on throughout the rest of the season. And guys, where was Trey Sanders? I know you all have been waiting to see him. I have too, and I think that's for good reason. Trey Sanders is listed as running back number 3, but you can make an argument that he has the most talent in this room, and we've all truly been waiting to see him get that extended opportunity, get a chance to maybe get 5, 6 touches in a row, really get a couple drives in a row. We haven't seen it quite yet. As we take a look at the final numbers on this Alabama running back room, Brian Robinson, 14 rushes, 75 yards. He had a touchdown, averaging 5.4 yards per carry. Jason McClellan finished today with 5 attempts, 17 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. And Bryce Young, the third rusher yesterday, he had 4 rushes for a negative yard. That includes sacks as well there, so obviously take that number with a grain of salt. But overall, this room had 27 rushes for 91 yards, a touchdown, averaging 3.4 yards per play. Before we continue in this video, guys, I need you to hit that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so, and go to BamaInsider.com for the latest in Alabama Crimson Tide news. And guys, one of my favorite parts of this video is seeing your comments. Get in there, let me know what you thought about yesterday's game, what you're excited for this week, and just give me a roll tide, guys. It's a good day to be part of Alabama Nation And it's a good day to be a wide receiver in this group because there's a lot of opportunity. There isn't necessarily one guy they're always going to go to. Now, we saw maybe not quite as many guys get worked into the fold yesterday. Only 4 Bama receivers with 3 or more catches, but they tried to spread the field and really tried to work that right side of the field, like I mentioned a minute ago early on in that game. We saw Jameson Williams really setting up this offense to start it, kind of opened up the field for this team, ended the day with 4 receptions for 61 yards. He led the team in yards, receiving yards that is. But after that first drive, we didn't really see Jameson get as activated throughout the rest of the game. Some other guys, Jahleel Billingsley, obviously, coming into the game, 1 catch, 1 touchdown, 26 yards. So interesting here, guys. This is a player we've all been waiting to see get his opportunity. Gets into the game, and I thought after that we would get to see him a lot throughout the second half. Really, the rest of that first half as well. Didn't. Interested now to see what they do with Billingsley. Cameron Latu not quite as activated yesterday. The tight end room as a whole not getting as many touches. Effective, though, like I said. The 1 catch for Billingsley did go for a touchdown. The running back room getting some catches as well and touchdowns in the air. Jace McClellan had 4 receptions for 41 yards and a touchdown. And we all thought Slade Bolden had a touchdown of his own. Dropped one in the end zone there. Alabama fans certainly coming hard on him. I get it. I understand. You got to make that catch. But I'm willing to give some more patience to Slade Bolden. But we do need to see some improvement there. This is the second touchdown pass we've seen him drop in the last calendar year. Can't be having that in a big-time game like Florida, and really a big moment as well. But we're going to see him handle that adversity. I know he is a strong player, and I think he's going to bounce back from this just fine. So look at the overall numbers. John Mechie finishes the day with 6 receptions for 42 yards. Jameson Williams, again, 4 catches, 61 yards. And like I said, only 4 Bama receivers with 3 or more catches. Will Anderson, the biggest storyline of the week, whether he would play or not. And for Florida, it was whether they would see Anthony Richardson or not. This picture right here kind of explains how the day went. It was Emory Jones versus Will Anderson at times. And Will Anderson, maybe still not even 100% yet. Probably somewhere around 75 to 80. He looked really, really good, guys. As good as he could have for yesterday's game, in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. Did Will Anderson look 100% to you? Was he ready to go for this game? I think one way or another he was. This defense as a whole, though, looked a little bit confused at times. This is a game that we circled on the calendar, knowing that it was going to be a high-powered offense versus a high-powered offense, and Florida showed up. That guy right there, Christian Harris, doing the heavy lifting at times yesterday, really looking impressive in the middle. This defensive unit as a whole, you see Fidarian Mathis there, kind of creating some pressure, getting his hand up in the air. Such an athletic player. But this defense didn't really put that much pressure on the quarterback, on Emory Jones. Like I said, you saw Will Anderson get into the backfield at times and really do a nice job at the line, but it seemed like Emory Jones had a lot of time to work with yesterday. He never really was too frazzled, was able to make better decisions than he has in weeks past, and I think that's why Florida's offense had so much success. Their line really came to play. Henry To'o made the right calls, I think, and was never too far out of position, but I think if Anthony Richardson plays, Alabama doesn't blitz quite as much. They maybe play a little bit more conservatively, keep those linebackers back at times instead of blitzing them as much as they did, and maybe you see a little bit different of a result there. Sometimes we saw Henry get up to the line quickly, but overall did a great job calling this game for the defense, and Drew Sanders on your screen there did a nice job as well. Now, this is where you miss Chris Allen because, like I said, there wasn't that much pressure on the pocket. And Drew Sanders isn't necessarily going to bring that kind of pressure. He's an unbelievable tackler, and that's what we love from Drew Sanders. But Chris Allen was probably going to bring you a little bit more pressure if he plays in yesterday's game. Overall, I think the defense handled the injuries well, handled the adversity, handled the swamp. Want to read the final numbers on some of these guys from the defense overall. Like I said, a solid day. DeMarc Helms had 11 total tackles, 6 solo tackles on the day. Henry To'o, 9 total tackles, 3 solo. Will Anderson, 7 total tackles with 4 solo. Fidarian Mathis, 7 and 1. Christian Harris, 6 total, 3 solo. Drew Sanders, 6 total tackles, 4 solo. Jordan Battle had 4 total, 3 solo. Job, 4 as well, 3 solo. Byron Young finishes the day with 4 tackles and 1 solo tackle. And to close it out, DJ Dale, 3 total and 3 solo. Considering the circumstances, this defense played as well as they could have and obviously made the goal line stand when it counted on the 2-point conversion. And it was costly penalties here as well, guys. I mean, how many times did Florida get the chance to convert a drive because there was an offside on third down. And you look at how many times Florida was able to connect over the middle when Alabama would try to blitz and get there too late because of how well that Florida offensive line was playing. Overall, good day for this defense, and now we're going to select our MVPs. Starting with this defense here, got to select DeMarco Hellams. And really, one reason is because of his energy. This dude brought it on Saturday. He had 11 total tackles, 6 solo tackles on the day, a player that we didn't get to see in game number 1. We knew he was going to have a monster 2021 when he got here, and he has gotten here and looked really good in these 2 games. Just seemed like he was all over the field yesterday, and in times when they needed somebody in the backfield, DeMarco is there, bringing the energy all the way around, and 11 tackles doesn't hurt the cause either. On the offensive side of the ball, Brian Robinson, like I said, 2 touchdowns on the day, one in a very clutch situation. He had 82 yards, 14 rushes, covering his 68.5 prop coming into this game, a long of 23 yards. And overall, probably not 100% like I mentioned earlier in the video. Still looked good and still showed a lot of heart in this game. Going against a pretty formidable Florida defensive line, at least a Florida defensive line that was having their best game of the season to this point. In just a moment, I'm going to break this game down by the numbers, but first I have to highlight our special teams. James Burnham, getting it done with the leg yesterday. He looked really good in that punting unit. We don't have any pictures in from the kicking unit, the place kicking unit that is, and Will Reichert. He looked good as well. He was 1 for 1 on field goals, hit one that was 24 yards deep, 3 for 3 as well. On the extra points to have another perfect day, this kid just does not miss. James Burnham, the punter, had 170 yards on 4 punts. He averaged 42.5 yards per punt. The special teams looking good again yesterday. Alabama overall breaking it down by the numbers versus Florida here. Your final score 31-29. Alabama ran 62 plays. Florida ran 70. I think that's where Florida was able to break this game down and keep it so close. They held the ball and kept possession longer than Alabama. First downs wise, Alabama had 19. Florida had 26. Alabama did convert at a higher rate on third down though. So they went 7 for 13. Florida just 5 for 12. And penalties-wise, Alabama had 11 for 75 yards. Florida had 7 penalties for 67 yards. Whether it was by 2 points or by 100, Alabama is glad they got this game in. A true SEC road test early in the season in a hostile environment. Some questions, of course, raised, though, after this game, as they always are. How will Alabama look against the next high-powered offense? The first question that I ask following this Florida game. How will they handle it? They didn't look terrible yesterday, just a little bit confused. They couldn't put pressure on the quarterback. Will they be able to do that against teams like Ole Miss and Matt Corral? The second question, can the Crimson Tide limit the penalties in loud environments? They were off yesterday, guys. They couldn't communicate as well as they needed to. That cost them some big-time penalties. And what can Alabama do to stop any kind of scoring drought? Yesterday, they went on 3 consecutive drives to start the second half without scoring. Florida scored on all of their drives. What can Alabama do to prevent that from happening in the future? I want the answer to these questions, guys. Get in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you think of this game as a whole and anything else that you want to talk about surrounding the Alabama Crimson Tide. Guys, before we get out of here, hit that like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit the super thanks and go to BamaInsider.com for all things Alabama Crimson Tide football. For BamaInsider.com, my name is Trey Yanity. This has been a post-game breakdown of Alabama's Week 3 matchup with the Florida Gators.